It began on a night when the sky wept like a wounded soul, and the wind screamed against the tall glass walls of a mansion that had everything except joy. Inside that mansion sat a young man named Ethan Crawford, the only son of billionaire Richard Crawford, a name known across continents for wealth, power, and perfection. But Ethan was not perfect, at least not in the way his father expected. He had been born mute, never once uttering a word since the day he came into the world. The doctors said his vocal cords were fine, but something deeper, something unexplainable, had locked his voice away forever. The Crawfords tried everything money could buy: specialists, therapists, even spiritual healers from faraway lands. But Ethan's silence remained unbroken. As years passed, his silence became his father's greatest shame. Richard Crawford, a man who built empires with words, couldn't stand having a son who had none. Ethan grew up surrounded by marble floors, grand staircases, and endless loneliness. He watched the world through his window, children laughing, people talking, life happening, while his world stayed quiet. He spoke only through written notes and gestures, and though his heart was kind, people treated him like a broken thing. He had one friend, Maria, a housekeeper's daughter, who had been by his side since childhood. She never pitied him. Instead, she saw him. She would talk for hours, telling him about the stars, her dreams, and her belief that miracles were real if you just dared to believe long enough. Ethan never believed in miracles. He had stopped hoping for them long ago. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and miracles that come when least expected, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel right now, because this story will remind you that even silence has a voice when the heart speaks loud enough. One stormy evening, everything changed. Richard Crawford had arranged a grand charity event in his mansion, a gathering of politicians, entrepreneurs, and celebrities. The air was thick with perfume and pride. Ethan, as usual, was told to stay out of sight. His father didn't want him near the guests. "It's bad optics," Richard once wrote in frustration to a therapist. But Maria insisted he join, even if just from afar. She believed he needed to see life, to feel it. Hidden behind the grand curtains of the ballroom, Ethan watched the people laugh, toast champagne, and pretend happiness. And that's when he noticed an old woman near the entrance. She didn't belong there. Her clothes were torn, her hair silver and tangled, her hands trembling as she held a small glass bottle filled with a strange, shimmering blue liquid. The guards tried to remove her, but she resisted, saying she came to give a gift. No one believed her. Something about her eyes stopped Ethan. They were calm yet piercing, as though they could see through every layer of a person's soul. Stepped out from behind the curtain, his heart pounding. Everyone stared. The mute son of Richard Crawford, standing in the middle of the golden ballroom like an unexpected shadow. Richard's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. The old woman looked straight at Ethan and said in a low voice that somehow silenced the room, "You've been quiet too long, child, but silence has its own kind of power, until it's time to speak." She held out the small bottle. "Drink this when the world turns its back on you one more time, and your truth will be heard." Security dragged her away. Richard, humiliated, shouted for the event to continue. Ethan clutched the bottle in his hand, unsure if what happened was real or just another cruel joke. That night his father scolded him with words sharp enough to wound. Ethan didn't cry. He simply walked away, clutching that little bottle, his only strange possession that seemed to hum softly under his touch. Days passed. Richard's frustration grew. He had arranged for Ethan to be sent to a private institution, a place for people like him. When Ethan found the letter, his hands trembled. His father was giving up on him completely. The one person who should have loved him most saw him as nothing more than a mistake. He ran from the mansion that night, barefoot, into the storm. Rain poured down as he made his way to the small cottage where Maria lived with her mother. When she saw him drenched and shaking, she pulled him inside without question. Ethan handed her the letter. Tears welled up in her eyes as she read it. "You're not broken, Ethan," she said, her voice trembling. "You have more heart than anyone in that mansion. Maybe that old woman was right. Maybe your silence is about to end." Ethan looked at the small bottle glowing faintly in his hand. For the first time, he felt something stir inside him. Not fear, not pain, but a desperate kind of hope. Maria nodded at him gently. "What if this is your moment?" He uncorked the bottle. The smell was sweet, like flowers and lightning mixed together. Without hesitation, he drank it. The liquid burned like fire going down, spreading warmth through his chest. And then, darkness. When he opened his eyes, he was lying on the floor, Maria crying beside him. He tried to speak, nothing came. His heart sank, it hadn't worked. He smiled weakly at her, trying to comfort her instead. But just as he reached for her hand, a whisper escaped his throat. A sound. A word. "Maria." Her eyes widened in disbelief. He said her name again, clear, trembling, but real. The impossible had happened. Tears poured down her face as she threw her arms around him. For the first time in 21 years, Ethan Crawford spoke. The next morning he went back to the mansion. His father was on the phone with business partners when Ethan walked in. Richard looked up, irritated, ready to scold him again, but stopped. Ethan's lips were moving. "Dad," he said softly. The phone slipped from Richard's hand. His face turned pale. Ethan's voice was raw, unsteady, but it carried a lifetime of unspoken words. "I'm sorry if I disappointed you." For a moment, the man who conquered the world stood speechless. He reached out, but his hands shook. Richard had never known how to say sorry, how to love gently. But at that moment, as he stared into his son's eyes, something inside him broke. He fell to his knees and whispered, "No, son, I'm the one who's sorry." From that day on, everything changed. Richard canceled all his meetings, sold his private jet, and began spending time with Ethan, walking through the gardens, listening to him talk about things he'd kept inside his whole life. The mansion that once echoed with silence now rang with laughter and love. But there was one mystery that never left Ethan's mind. Who was that old woman, and what was in that bottle? He and Maria searched for her for months, asking around nearby towns, but no one had seen or heard of her. Some said she was an angel, others said she was a healer from an ancient tribe. But Ethan began to believe she was something else entirely. A messenger sent by fate reminding him that miracles don't always make sense. Years later, Ethan started a foundation for children with speech and communication challenges. He used his wealth and his story to give others hope. Every year he would tell them about the night he found his voice. Not because of magic, but because someone believed he could. He always said, "And the real miracle wasn't the liquid. It was faith, the moment I believed I was more than my silence." One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan visited Maria in the same little cottage where everything had begun. They were older now, but the bond between them was stronger than ever. He brought her a small wooden box. Inside was a new glass bottle, identical to the one the old woman had given him, but filled with clear water this time. He smiled. "For someone else who needs to believe," he said. Maria looked at him, tears glistening in her eyes. "Oh, and you really are a miracle, Ethan." He shook his head softly. "No, the miracle was never that I spoke. It was that love spoke through me first." If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Your one comment or share might be the miracle someone else needs today. Before the story ends, I want to ask you something special. Would you still believe in miracles if they came wrapped in pain first? Comment below with the words, "And I believe." Ethan's story reminds us that sometimes the world silences us not to punish us but to prepare us, so that when we finally speak, our words can heal not just ourselves, but everyone around us. And in that truth, in that unshakable faith born from suffering, we discover the most beautiful kind of power, the power to believe that even in silence, life is whispering, your time will come.